Every year, on the 6th of December, my family celebrates a religious holiday called St. Nicholas Day. It is an annual celebration when a religious figure of St. Nicholas comes to the homes of Slovenian people, brings candy to the children. And for your reference, St. Nicholas was actually a Catholic bishop who lived around year 280, and he used his inheritance to help the poor and sick. And so it was 6th of December 2007, now 6 years old, almost 7, and I had received so much candy from St. Nicholas. I remember asking myself how I was going to finish it. Such a struggle for a 6-year-old child. And so I decided to eat half of the candy, and I brought the other half to the school. And since some of the greedy kids already took more than one piece, I thought of selling a piece of candy for something like €1. I was so greedy and savage. And so in that way, the kids who really wanted the candy bought it, and the others sadly remained without. And I went home that day with something like €20 in my pocket. I remember being very proud of myself. And I was savage enough to ask my mom to buy me another pack for the next day, and somehow she was kind enough to do so. I didn't tell her about my intentions, though. That happened like 2 or 3 more times. And then soon teachers found out. They told my parents my first business plan was over. Now, today I see this as a funny story, right? This small event of my life, the St. Nicholas Day, is, however, part of a much bigger world of consumerism, just like the Black Friday, the first day of Christmas shopping season. Contemplating this makes me realize that we all, as consumers, desire something, right? So a 6-year-old child like I was back then, they really want this piece of candy. Someone else may want a precious piece of jewelry, and another person may really want this fancy sports car they've been looking at. Now, all of these individuals may be really passionate about a certain object, but they don't really think about how that object was created. In a nutshell, they're interested solely in the product, where they're neglecting the effort and work put into the production. An almost identical case can be found in the world of arts, which was introduced into my life pretty early. When people ask me to tell them about myself, I usually start off by saying that I grew up in a family of artists and art lovers. I'm a proud grandson and son of art collectors and researchers, and a sibling to 2 self-employed artists. And so I pretty early realized not only what does it mean to be an artist, but also how to survive as one, and what it means to sell an artwork. And I figured out that to sell an artwork is nothing like to sell your average loaf of bread, right? It rather means to sell a piece of yourself in order to be able to buy a loaf of bread. There's just this added dimension that really makes a difference. And so, since art is such an ambiguous topic of discussion with people trying to define it, people often have a limited idea of what art is, or better said, what it could be. And that's the reason why I so many times hear this sentence in a modern art gallery, "Oh my God, this is a total joke," right? Even my 5 or 10-year-old could make an artwork like this. And the truth is that people often just have a limited idea of what goes into the sole production of creation of a specific artwork. Now, when growing up with my older siblings, I remember recklessly running around their studios and them always being so afraid I was going to squash one of their sketches or paint with crayons on their drawings and paintings or crush into their sculptures. And even though my early definition of art back then was probably just a bunch of paint on a canvas or a bunch of clay put together in an orderly manner, I today realize that was the first form of art education I had received. And that was the first stage of me developing my respect for the creation of a specific artwork. Now, stemming from this is the idea that art is indeed the best form of education one can receive. I believe that engaging with art, making art, talking about it, helps us realize what's going on around us, helps us think and reflect about our problems and struggles. Artists saturate their works with matters within them and around them, right? However, you may also know that engagement with art, in any sense you can think of, is still a great matter of privilege. Now, even though the biggest and most prominent art institutions in sort of Europe, American context, like Museum of Modern Art in New York or Tate Modern in London, are now trying to bridge their services to the financially less privileged by offering stuff like admission days, their offerings still do remain a great matter of exclusivity, right? If you look at the demographics of the audience of such museums, you can see that the predominant class is white and most often belongs to the middle or upper class. And that's because the works exhibited in those places often belong to white artists who happen, in most cases, to be male as well. And what's more, right, art is so often discussed as something that is purely as a financial asset, something that will appreciate over time its value. And so until the concept of an artwork is going to be seen as something I can buy today and throw away tomorrow, or sell in a couple of years in order to earn a huge profit, visit to a gallery or a museum is going to remain the last option as a weekend family activity in the United States and abroad, really. So when growing up in a Central European post-socialist country of Slovenia, I didn't really have many chances to study art in a formal setting, theoretically or practically, really. And because of that, as I said earlier, the bulk of my art education was held in my household. And the truth is that the hours of art education in the educational systems across the world tend to be the lowest per week, while the hours of STEM or natural sciences tend to be the highest. Now, some say that that's because art is so often seen as something that, unlike science, doesn't really bring the development or social progress to the society, right? And so in the United Kingdom specifically, the most recent survey done by the National Society for Education in Art and Design, or NSCAD for short, showed that more than a third of asked educators said that they have been having less and less time to teach arts. Now they're saying that more and more students are choosing subjects that are STEM-oriented, and they just get distracted with science, and they don't have time to do art or talk about it. And because of that, organizations like NSCAD have started promoting this concept called STEM versus STEAM. By incorporating art into science, technology, engineering, and math, students whose primary interests do lie in natural sciences are now able to more effectively improve their cognitive abilities, their visualization skills, and even work on their emotional intelligence. Now, just like science or mathematics often requires lots of time, explanations, and conversations for an individual to understand, the same concept can be applied to arts, right? To really understand this relation between arts versus science, we can take a look at calculus, right? A mathematical concept that I used to struggle a lot with. And if I didn't do a bunch of homework and more homework and have had a bunch of conversations and took extra classes, I'll probably never be able to develop my appreciation for a concept like calculus. And in the same way, someone may walk into a modern art gallery, see modernist painting like work by Jackson Pollock, and not understand anything by just staring at it for hours and hours. They'll need to learn about it. They'll need to talk about it in order to delete this barrier between themselves and the artwork. Now, take a look at this work. This work was actually created by my brother. And at first sight, just looking at a bunch of ceramic phalluses in a straight line, you may think that this scene is unrepresentational of real life or even absurd. However, after talking to the artist or even living with him, which happens to be my case, and learning about it, you can start constructing your own more wholesome interpretation of a work like this. Now, I'm sure that by now you're all very much curious. What is this penis thing you're looking at? And so I'll let you out of the cage and tell you about it. So this work, titled Obelisk, was created in 2013 for an exhibition of new, so modern, official souvenirs for the city of Vienna. It was exhibited at the Wien Museum, or the Museum of the City of Vienna. And now you're asking, okay, so how does it relate to historical and cultural identities of Vienna? And so the story lies in the biography of the Prince Eugene of Savai. Now, for those who don't know, Prince Eugene was a royal who lived in the late 17th and early 18th century. And he first belonged to the court of Louis XIV, and later on to the Habsburg monarchy situated in Vienna. Now, based on today's research, we know that, that Prince Eugene was, or we can speculate that he was a closeted queer individual who expressed his identity through his large collection of porcelain. Now, even though I could continue talking about his work for hours and hours, I don't have time, unfortunately, but now you know something little about it, and you're already able to construct a better and more wholesome interpretation or even definition of an object like this. by giving the justice to the artist as well. Now imagine this, if everyone had an opportunity to obtain art education, talking about his artwork, describing it would be as commonplace as talking about math or science. See, today I realize the great privilege that my family gave me. They embedded in me the joy to look at art and the critical thought that comes with it. And because of that, I believe that art should be seen as a medium of expression alternative to, let's say, mainstream press or social media posts. The redefining process of art from stage one being this untasteful splash of paint to stage two being a thoroughly constructed personal definition lies in the simple idea of education, what you guys are doing today, so well done. See, when giving individuals a platform to study and learn, they will start seeing art not as a random assemblage of materials, but as a beautiful, always evolving and complex journey. Thank you so much.